You matter, and so does your story.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Get Life podcast. I'm Cheryl Hope, an ex-member of the Exclusive Brethren, now known as the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. Today's video is to answer questions and comments from you all, and we'll also be going through emails between myself and the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. For those who haven't watched the latest podcast, the charity arm of the Brethren, the Rapid Relief Team, has filed a lawsuit against me over their cartoon bird mascot, which appeared very briefly in a couple of our podcast episodes. That image came directly from their own social media posts and website. It was never the focus of our discussion and was never even mentioned in the criticisms or appeals we were making to them. Yet, in what I believe is very typical of the PBCC, critics must be silenced, despite their public claims of care and compassion for all. I want to be very clear about something. My abuser is a volunteer with this charity, the Rapid Relief Team. You can see that here. And when you look at how this has been handled, it becomes very clear where care and compassion were directed, towards protecting the perpetrator, not the victim. I filed a police report in 2022, and many of you have asked for updates, and we're going to address the biggest question that I get. Why hasn't Ellen been arrested? And this is the million-dollar question we all have. Let's be clear. The police investigation is live, and the perpetrators will be receiving more visits from the investigative team this year. But over 40 years has passed since these events took place, and this case is extremely complex. If this had only involved Ellen Drever acting alone, the situation would look very different. But this case involves multiple locations, multiple people, and a wider network. I was taken to multiple locations. There were mobile homes involved, one where Hutterites were present, and another where I was taken carrying a backpack of money. I was taken to truck drivers. I was introduced to a woman who was a driver. She picked me up from Ellen's home and transported me to other locations. Ellen introduced me to a stranger in his house. The next time I met him, it was at a Quonset building that Ellen took me to, where I was handed over to him. Inside that Quonset, there was another group of people present. This was not a single incident, and it was not a single offender. But the one person who could clarify much of this is Ellen Drever, and he has refused to cooperate with police. Despite repeated public claims by the PBCC that they take abuse seriously and encourage members to go to the police, that has not been my lived experience in this case. I want to dive into Ellen Drever's family history. First of all, we start with Ellen Drever. I am not the first complaint involving Ellen Drever. Since coming forward, I have had many people reach out to me about his behavior. Some of those reports are very current. Ellen delivered propane to rural towns and farms in and around Maple Creek. I was told that his delivery route was altered many years ago due to exposing himself to female customers. I was also told that those concerns were taken to the police at the time, and that police went to the church where the church said they would take care of it. If they had actually taken care of it, would I still be sitting here today talking about the heinous crimes he committed? But in true PBCC fashion, everything is buried. There is no accountability, and the problem only becomes bigger. This family in particular has been known for sexual misconduct and abuse issues. My Uncle Dennis and another family member have admitted to what Ellen did to them. My Uncle Dennis also made a police report. After I came forward publicly, I was told of another incident. Ellen phoned my brother's home and requested that one of their daughters come to clean his place. My brother's wife said their daughter could go only if she could go as well. Ellen declined that. Ellen Drever Sr., which is Ellen's father. Ellen's father also had a history. One of those involved my grandmother. At the time, it was passed off as an affair. But as reports have come my way, suggest something very different. Then there's Ellen's nephew and niece, Arden and Rhonda. I have testimony from someone who says that they were abused by both Arden and Rhonda. When you listen to the full account, you can clearly see how much grooming was involved from Arden. Arden was engaged to Sally Simonton, and his explanation to his victim, who was also engaged to be married to another person, was that Sally would understand. The victim was so afraid that after fighting him off, she tried to escape through a bathroom window. This is an excerpt from her testimony. I remember Arden putting his arm around me and pulling me close to him. "What are you doing?" I ask him. "It's okay," he replies. He starts trying to get his other hand down my shirt. At this point, I'm so confused. This is not the Arden I know. I considered Arden a big brother figure to me. He's pulling me closer to him, and all of a sudden, something inside me actually fires up and I realize I might be in danger. That this is not a game. I start to use my elbow to push into his side, but he is strong, and I realize suddenly that he is trying to push me down on the couch. "What about Sally?" I ask. "Sally won't mind. She'll understand," he replies to me. We're struggling while talking. He's trying to push me, and I don't know how I do it, but I push at him and say, "Well, blank will. Blank won't understand." And she's referring to her soon-to-be husband. And I jump up. He is right behind me. I'm so panicky at this point. I run to the bathroom and slam the door, but he's right there, and I struggle to close and lock it. I'm telling him to leave, to please leave, but he's rattling the door handle and trying to get inside the bathroom. I'm feeling sheer terror at this point. I stand in the tub and look at the window. It's winter and it's closed up tight. I open up the window and struggle to remove the screen. I look down. It's a pretty long jump, probably about 10 feet. I'm trying to decide how to get my body up to the window to climb out. Arden is still rattling the door handle, still trying to get in. As you will see later on in this podcast, that Arden received this testimony and has never reached out to the victim to put things right. Does this sound like they take allegations of abuse seriously and encourage their members to do what's right? No, that isn't what they do unless they're caught with their pants down in front, and even then, if you are high up enough, you will still get away with it, as we see here in Maple Creek. This victim still has the letters that were written back and forth between herself and her fiancé discussing what happened. Arden and Rhonda both need to take accountability in their matters if they hold themselves to what the PBC spokespeople say. Ellen's son is the next one I want to talk about. There is also an accusation of sexual abuse involving Ellen's son. Although a well-paid lawyer successfully defended him, the judge clearly stated that the outcome in no way reflected negatively on the woman's testimony. But again, the point here is this. Where is this systemic abuse coming from inside this family? One of the other questions I get is, how did Ellen have access to all these people he trafficked me to? I did answer this in one of the last questions, but I do want to reiterate that Ellen delivered propane to many, many people, rural towns, farms, and Hutterite colonies. His job gave him access to a wide range of people and locations. Another question I get often is, have I heard from any brethren in Maple Creek? Yes, actually I have. After my husband went there in November, I had communication with Tim and Arden Bond. In total, there were 24 emails back and forth. 5 of those emails included Bruce Hales and his sons. That entire exchange resulted in absolutely nothing. Tim showed zero interest in actually resolving anything. He locked onto one position and refused to move from it. Leadership and pastoral care have not changed in the 30-plus years since I left. They still remain arrogant, misogynistic, narcissistic, and filtered through the same narrow lens Maple Creek always has. They have no understanding of trauma-informed spaces, just as they didn't 30 years ago, when many teens and children were deeply harmed and cast out of that locality. There has been no change, and his emails made that abundantly clear. Eventually, I walked away because we were getting nowhere. At the beginning, I genuinely thought there might be progress. We had agreed to a Zoom meeting. It was scheduled, but once I disclosed that Steve Simmons would be present, 3 hours before the Zoom call, they suddenly had something come up. From that point on, everything went downhill. Zoom was no longer acceptable. They wanted an in-person meeting only, no recording, no additional people present, and no willingness to adhere to what a trauma-informed space actually looks like. They kept circling back to the very first email where we had requested a meeting in Maple Creek and asked for a response within 24 hours. We asked them to meet in person. Ironically, it took them a full week to reply. By that point, my husband had become seriously ill. As a heart transplant recipient, he was back in strict isolation for 4 to 6 weeks. They refused to move past this, and every conversation kept snapping back to that single point. We tried repeatedly to get basic questions answered. The responses we received were typical PBCC replies. So let's walk through these emails. The very first email was sent out to Bruce Hales, his sons, and a couple dozen other prominent brethren in the PBCC. I'm not going to read through absolutely everything in all these emails. There's 24. It's a lot. There will be a link below in a folder that you can go through and read them yourself. I'm going to pick out main parts that need to be read out. In this email, there's just an introduction about who I am, what I've gone through. We're talking about the claims that they make in the Strive 26 podcast. And I addressed Tim Bond. Tim Bond, after my father's stroke, you told us that you'd be there if we ever needed help. We are asking for that help now. In summary, the brethren have been aware since March 17th, 2022 of Ellen's horrific course of sexual abuse with children and other women in the community. In the intervening 3.5 years, the brethren have never once reached out to me or shown any interest in safeguarding the vulnerable children and women in Maple Creek or seeking to bring help to Ellen Drever. They've never reached out to me to express any form of apology or concern for what I endured. Not only that, it appears that they have now intervened to prevent my family members from communication with us. We are requesting a meeting by 9 p.m. local time tomorrow, November 13th, 2025, with a family member, Trevor and/or Kevin, and with Tim Bond. If this meeting does not take place, we will proceed to release all audio and video recordings related to this matter, including those collected during our attempts to seek help, to the public and to journalists. I go on to appeal to Bruce. Bruce, I am appealing to you directly to take up your responsibilities in this matter, to ensure that Ellen receives the intervention and accountability he needs to protect the children and women in Maple Creek and to ensure that those who have been harmed by him receive the justice they deserve. We trust you will treat this with the seriousness it requires. Curtis and Cheryl Bottenheimer. And in this email, I attached the video of Ellen that I originally gave them. I attached all the emails that I had sent to my parents up to this point, pleading with them to please cooperate with the police and to try and resolve this. We heard nothing for a full week, and then we got an email back. The reply email from Tim said this: Hello, Curtis and Cheryl. I'm writing to acknowledge receipt of your email sent last Wednesday evening. As a result of this letter and my conversation with Curtis Friday morning, would the both of you be willing to meet with Arden and I? Our response was, thanks for replying. Yes, we would love to chat. I'm not free to meet in person, but can send you a Zoom link. We can be available this Sunday, November 23rd at 6 or 7 p.m. your time. What works better for you both? Tim's response: Thank you for responding. A face-to-face meeting would be our preference as opposed to Zoom. Please advise when this could potentially work for you. We replied, there are valid reasons why I cannot meet with you in person. One I will discuss with you while on Zoom. Another is, given the priestly visits I endured for years, would trigger every trauma in my body again. I will not subject myself to that. Zoom is how we can do this safely on everyone's terms. This was strongly suggested against by my psychologist. This is a non-negotiable. My therapist is going to be within a phone call's reach if needed. Does Sunday at 6 or 7 p.m. still work for you? Regards, Cheryl. I then followed up with this email. I also think it's super important you understand what it means to be trauma-informed after someone comes out with what happened to them. Your last email clearly is showing you don't understand it. Please respect that and inform yourself. This is a tool missing that is clearly a problem within the PBCC. Tim's response was, hello, Curtis and Cheryl. Thank you for your response. We understand. I am traveling on Sunday. Would there be an alternative time that would work for you? And you can imagine at this point, I was completely delusional and genuinely thinking that they actually wanted to do this. I was even excited Maple Creek had actually changed. We responded, unfortunately, the next time we could be available is Thursday evening. What time works best for you? We are available between 7 to 10 p.m. your time. Then Arden sent a Zoom link, to which I replied, and we responded, thank you for the message. I will be hosting this meeting at 8 p.m. your time. So please use my Zoom link below. I have spoken with our lawyer, and for transparency and documentation purposes, this meeting will be recorded. Steve Simmons will be present on the call as well. Please reply to confirm you have received this message. See you both tomorrow evening. Thank you, Cheryl. On the day of the Zoom call, 3.5 hours before it was supposed to happen, we received this email. Hello, Curtis and Cheryl. We have had something unexpected come up in the family tonight, so we would like to postpone this meeting. We will come back to you with a proposed date and time. That was sent at 3:23, and we were having a Zoom meeting at 7 p.m. my time. Now keep this timing in mind for later because we were told that our request for 24 hours wasn't enough time for them to respond when Curtis was in Maple Creek. We responded with, thanks for letting us know. I understand unexpected things can come up. That said, it's important that this meeting happens in a timely manner given the seriousness of the issues we're addressing. You can understand how this looks on my end when we have no trust built. Let's reschedule for the same time next week and use the same Zoom link. Please confirm that this works for you in the next 24 hours. Regards, Cheryl. I never heard anything back from them within that 24 hours, so I sent this message. Good evening. I haven't heard from you, and with my very busy schedule, I need to confirm this today. Are you both available for a Zoom call Thursday at 8 p.m. your time? Regards, Cheryl. The following morning, I received an email that said, we will work towards that. This is where Steve Simmons stepped into the email thread and messaged Tim directly. So once again, Steve puts forth an absolute incredible articulated response to Tim with his last email of just sloughing us off. I'm not going to read through all of this. This will be in the link below. One of the things I'm going to read out here is his introduction. Hello, Tim and Arden. Please excuse me for butting in here, but I regard this as a complete unacceptable response. Resolving Cheryl's abuse should be far and away the highest priority item on your calendar. Every other task should be fitted around that. As you well know, many churches in the world around are turning a blind eye to moral matters such as homosexuality, sex before marriage, and even occasional marriage infidelity. But one thing that is universally condemned in almost every denomination is sexual molestation of children. Why should it be tolerated in the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, which claims to be the one true position on earth with the most light? There are many other cases in the PBCC where it has been covered up and the perpetrators never taken issue with, despite having destroyed the lives of innocent children. You do not need instructions from Sydney or from any other persons as to how you should act. You have the Bible, and you are both in positions of responsibility. God will hold you accountable for the length of time this has gone on with no action. He will not accept, I was only acting under orders, as an excuse. If you have any knowledge of how God regards sin, and especially sinning against one of these little ones, every moral fiber in your body would cry out until this matter had been fully brought into the light and met in righteousness. Steve goes through a lot of the facts that we've already gone through here and really puts it in black and white for Tim and Arden to be able to understand. He ends it with, Tim and Arden, this is simply not acceptable. I have already been excommunicated for refusing to accept that serious matters such as this can be swept under the carpet. Mr. Hales and the brethren can do no more to stop me speaking out against such travesty of justice. With God's help, I will continue to do so. I await your reply. You do not need to discuss how to reply with Sydney or any other person or a lawyer. Just do what is right in the sight of God. If you do not know what this is, you are not qualified to take such a lead in the church. Steve Simmons. The next day, we received another response. This time, Steve was left off of the email. Their tone had completely changed, and this is where everything went south. Maybe they planned this all along. Maybe they received direction from Sydney, but this was the moment I knew Maple Creek had never changed, and my bubble was burst. When tested on care and compassion, Maple Creek's true colors showed all over again. Here is their email. Hello, Curtis and Cheryl. Following up on our earlier message, we would like this meeting to take place in person, as previously requested in correspondence with Curtis. Cheryl, if you're unable to attend, perhaps Curtis can. Regarding your request to record the session, we cannot agree to this. This is not a legal proceeding, but a meeting in good faith. Initiated at yours and Curtis's request. Finally, to clarify, we do not agree with much of the content in your original email. We are prepared to discuss these points openly at our upcoming in-person meeting in Red Deer or Calgary, location to be determined. Take note of the phrase, meeting in good faith. This is a discussion about being sexually trafficked, and they expect us to meet in person with no recording and on their terms, all in good faith, because the PBCC have fully established that with us ex-members, haven't they? My response was this. We started this email off with Tim and Arden. We are both responding to your recent message because it contains factual inaccuracies and contains a pattern of avoidance and shifting expectations. Let's correct the record. Number one, Curtis did request an in-person meeting when he was physically in Maple Creek. Curtis sent an email with a timeline and no one respected that. Is that good faith? Cheryl was never going to be part of an in-person meeting. Curtis went to Maple Creek a second time, knocked on doors, was met with closed doors, had doors literally shut in his face, was told I'm not free to talk, received zero in-person engagement from anyone, including you not answering his calls until the last minute. For you now to imply that we are refusing an in-person meeting we supposedly requested is simply false. You refused to meet when Curtis was actually standing in front of you. In number two, we just addressed the stalking on LinkedIn, the court papers that he brought up against a couple podcasts. Our third point was, then you insisted on an unrecorded private in-person meeting after years of silence. This expectation is inappropriate, unsafe, and inconsistent with the PBCC's own public messaging. Your own Strive 26 seminar states, if any brethren or family members have been hard done by, don't hesitate to reach out to make sure matters are searched out and remedied. And all churches are autonomous. If these statements held any weight in Maple Creek, the response to Cheryl's disclosure would have been entirely different. Instead, after she spoke up, Ellen was placed on Main Street in Maple Creek with RRT. It's not care, it's not compassion, and it is not accountability. There is no meeting in the middle here because nothing has been extended on your end. Number four, Curtis just got out of the hospital. In person is medically impossible. Curtis recently experienced a serious medical issue, and as a transplant patient, he is required to remain isolated from others for weeks. For you to continue insisting on an in-person meeting under these circumstances while refusing to meet when he was already in Maple Creek is unreasonable and dismissive. Meeting in person was possible when he was there. It is medically impossible now. Number five, good faith requires truth, consistency, and safety, none of which have been demonstrated. Good faith is not canceling a confirmed meeting 3.5 hours beforehand, refusing recording without a valid reason, insisting on secrecy, rewriting the history of what occurred, using delay tactics, pushing for conditions that re-traumatize a survivor, treating a survivor's disclosure as an inconvenience. Good faith begins with transparency and compassion, which neither has been evident. I then go into what a trauma-informed environment includes. Respecting the survivor's choice of meeting format, ensuring predictability, allowing support persons, avoiding settings that replicate past harm, enabling documentation to prevent reinterpretation. These are clinical standards, not preferences. Every condition you have attempted to impose violates these principles. And then I go forward, giving them a few boundaries. All communication will now occur in writing via email only. There will be no in-person meeting. There will be no unrecorded conversations. Cheryl will not be separated from Curtis or her chosen support people. These boundaries are non-negotiable. They ensure safety, accuracy, and accountability, especially in a situation where none has been shown. If you wish to proceed constructively, respect these boundaries and respond in writing. Let me remind you what you were instructed at Strive 26, and then I go through all of that. I then asked them to confirm the following. You can represent the Maple Creek congregation in this matter. If you can't, please indicate who can. Are you willing to address the matters in writing as requested? We will be sending a second email that will have a list of questions needing to be answered along with a testimony. That is another reason why Cheryl would never sit down with Arden. Regards, Curtis and Cheryl Bottenheimer. So that next email had this list of questions. This email was also sent to Bruce Hales and his sons. To move forward and in light of your refusal to participate in a recorded meeting, I am requesting written answers to the following questions. These questions are necessary to determine whether your stated desire to discuss matters openly is genuine and whether the Maple Creek oversight is acting in accordance with publicly stated PBCC principles. Please answer each question. Number 1. Why did no responsible person from Maple Creek contact me after I disclosed child sexual abuse in March 2022? 2. Why did no responsible person contact me after the July 5th, 2022 public disclosure podcast? 3. When you were provided Ellen's confession, what action, if any, was taken in response to that evidence? 4. Why was an in-person meeting insisted upon when you were informed repeatedly with medical and psychological reasons that such a meeting was not safe for me? 5. What safeguarding measures have been implemented in Maple Creek since becoming aware of Ellen's admitted abuse? 6. Please give me the contact details of the persons responsible for safeguarding in Maple Creek. 7. Does Ellen have access to the Brethren's school, religious services, and Brethren households where vulnerable children are present? 8. If the answer to number 7 is yes, please explain why. Before I read out number 9, Tim Bond finally answered Curtis's phone call. And as they were discussing the audio and video that Curtis had received, Tim Bond happened to say, "Isn't it innocent until proven guilty?" So that's the reference we make in number 9. You justified your inaction to Curtis by saying, "Isn't it innocent until proven guilty?" However, Brethren operate on the scriptural principles of having 2 or 3 witnesses to any issue. And the scripture I quoted is, "This third time I am coming to you, in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses shall every matter be established." There have been numerous witnesses to Ellen's conduct. Dennis Hope's testimony, neighbors, hospital personnel, members of the exclusive Brethren, customers he used to deliver gas to. Having said that, why has no restriction been placed on him to protect vulnerable Brethren members and members of the wider community? In addition to this, he effectively confessed himself by sending an apology to Cheryl and told Curtis he needed to get help. This last confession removes the need for independent witnesses. Number 10, given the numerous witnesses to Ellen's conduct, why do you continue to break bread with him? And more importantly, why do you compel my parents to break bread with him in person on a weekly basis? Number 11, in 1994, I was placed under assembly discipline and withdrawn from for getting pregnant out of wedlock. How do you explain this harsh punishment for the sin of getting pregnant, where Ellen receives no censure for raping me as a child? That's a hard one to read out because that's just a really hard one. That's just a hard one. I think for me, the injustice of this is what weighs so heavy on my heart every single day. And not just me, every person, every ex-member that is in this situation, because they do not accept accountability. The hard part is that we have these senseless acts that we got withdrawn from for, when the act that was done upon us is absolutely horrific and isn't taken into consideration. I want to remind you, one of the priests that withdrew from me, so that's the last stage of excommunication in the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, he was 110% aware of what was happening to me as a child. Your Strive 26 seminar emphasized transparency and accountability. You have stated that you wish to discuss these matters openly. A written record is the most transparent and accountable way to do so. I am attaching a written testimony that includes an assault by Arden and molestation by your sister Rhonda. This was written in July of 2022. I have these questions regarding your family. Number 1, what has happened in your family that has caused such systemic abuse to happen? 2, what do you plan on doing about this? 3, given this accusation, do you think it is appropriate for Arden to represent the Maple Creek congregation in this matter? I look forward to your responses. Thank you, Cheryl. So Tim's response is very dismissive and goes back to email number 1, and this is what they stay stuck on through this whole thing. As I mentioned in my last email, you first said you wanted to have an in-person meeting and that you traveled to Maple Creek to meet with members of the PBCC in person. Now, after we said that we would meet with you in person, you say that you do not want to meet us. That is your choice. If you change your mind again, please let us know, as we can still set up a meeting. As I said before, I do not agree with much of anything in your emails. However, we are happy to discuss all of this at an in-person meeting. As for the allegations in your email, let me be clear. Sexual abuse is illegal and immoral and is not tolerated by the PBCC. Again, you guys, how many times have we heard that statement? This is their statement that comes out in everything. You see it in the article that Michael Batchelor just wrote about this lawsuit against me. It's the same sentence that gets delivered everywhere, but their actions are so differently. It goes on to say, here in Maple Creek, the PBCC has encouraged its members to report any alleged illegal activity to the proper authorities and also encouraged members to cooperate in any investigation by law enforcement. This is because the authorities are competent to investigate such allegations, determine whether they are true, and proceed appropriately. We look forward to hearing from you if you change your mind again about the meeting. And it's so frustrating working with them because he's so dismissive in what we were asking for. He doesn't go into anything about a trauma-informed space. Again, very dismissive, and goes back to, well, the police are going to do what they're going to do. So it completely contradicts itself when they're sitting there talking about, we encourage its members to report any alleged illegal activity. They encourage members to cooperate in any investigation. It's absolute bullshit. They don't. Again, this was an ongoing back and forth discussion, repeatedly reiterating 2 very clear points. Number 1, I will never meet with them in person without a support person present or without a recording. Number 2, my husband is living in a medical bubble and cannot meet in person. Again, Zoom is the only safe option. And learn what a trauma-informed space actually looks like. You're being so dismissive. You're not hearing what we're saying. This is why I'm calling you out the way I'm calling you out, is because you did not get the 2 most important facts that we were trying to bring through to you. It was in his response to the allegations of sexual abuse that I realized something very clearly. This man is never going to take accountability. And they know what Ellen's done. Yet again, this is not about helping a victim of his uncle's heinous crimes. It is not about protecting the children of Maple Creek. It's about keeping everything buried, and they do it in the most narcissistic way possible. My reply to this was this, and once again, this email was also sent to Sydney. I labeled this email Request for Accuracy, Accountability, and Written Responses. Thank you for your reply. There are several points in your email that require correction for the sake of accuracy and for the written record. Number 1, the in-person meeting you referred to was requested while Curtis was physically in Maple Creek and was ignored. For accuracy, here is the exact wording again, and I quote the exact wording. Curtis was already in Maple Creek at that time and fully available to meet. Despite this, no one responded to the request. No one made themselves available. Doors were literally closed on him and no responsible person engaged. Tim, you could have met with Curtis Friday morning when you finally answered your phone. That opportunity was not taken nor offered. For you now to imply that an in-person meeting is something you have been offered and that we refused is inconsistent with a documented timeline. Number 2, written communication is required because your handling has shown no transparency. Curtis has medical limitations. Your refusal to allow recording and your inconsistent responses make written communication the only responsible format. We are transparent. We have nothing to hide. Written correspondence ensures accuracy, prevents reinterpretation, and is the only way trust can even begin to be rebuilt. Number 3, your general statements of disagreement does not address the facts. If you dispute our statements, please answer directly. A, do you dispute that Cheryl disclosed the abuse in March 2022 and no one followed up? B, do you dispute that you received Ellen Drever's recorded confession? C, do you dispute that no one contacted Cheryl after receiving it? D, do you dispute that Trevor and Kevin closed their doors on Curtis? E, do you dispute canceling the Zoom meeting hours before it began? F, do you dispute failing to answer any of the written questions already sent? These require clear, direct answers. 4, your reference to reporting to authorities conflicts with your actions. The facts are straightforward. Ellen confessed to Curtis and has not cooperated with the police since the beginning, so you know that this blanket statement is an outright lie. Please clarify. A, has Ellen provided a statement to the police? B, or has he informed the police he does not wish to speak with them? Your claim of encouraging cooperation must be matched with facts. 5, an unrecorded in-person meeting is not happening. A trauma-informed process requires safety, documentation, predictability, support persons. Your proposed format meets none of these requirements. The boundary stands. 6, your actions show no intention of addressing this matter responsibly. You have ignored the in-person request when Curtis was present, canceled the Zoom meeting at the last minute, refused recording, refused transparency, refused trauma-informed communication, and refused to answer written questions. This pattern is noted. 7, your response made no mention of the survivor testimony that included allegations against Arden and Rhonda. The testimony was provided to senior leadership, to you, Tim, and to Arden. None of you acknowledged it. Tim, your email ignored the disclosure entirely. Arden, you remained silent, though this allegation directly named you. If this is the standard of response to an abuse disclosure within Maple Creek leadership, it is not acceptable. Going forward, all communication will remain in writing only. Regards, Curtis and Cheryl Bottenheimer. 4 days went by with no response, so I followed up with another email, giving them an additional 6 days to respond. This email is titled Needing Quality Care in Maple Creek. It's addressed to Tim, Arden, Bruce, Dean, Gareth, Charles, and Greg. Strive 26 explicitly called for responsible individuals in each locality to address and resolve concerns raised by those who believe they have been mistreated within the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. In response to this directive, and assuming it was issued in good faith, I have repeatedly contacted you with specific questions regarding the physical, sexual, psychological, and spiritual abuse I endured over many years at the hands of members of the Maple Creek congregation. In your most recent response to my email of December 12, 2025, you once again declined to answer these questions. You also failed to confirm whether you have the authority to speak on behalf of the Maple Creek congregation in relation to these matters. I have made sustained efforts to keep these matters contained and addressed through the process you were identified to represent. However, your continued refusal to engage with serious and unresolved moral issues leaves me with no alternative but to seek accountability through a wider audience. I am therefore providing one final opportunity for you to address the questions previously put to you. If I do not receive a substantive and satisfactory response by December 22nd, 2025, I will proceed to place these matters before the wider community. This will include all correspondence exchanged to date. Your failure to provide meaningful responses will be understood as a deliberate choice not to engage, despite being given repeated and reasonable opportunities to do so. Regards, Curtis and Cheryl Bottenheimer. On the 22nd, I finally received a reply, and the answers showed their true colors and reminded me exactly why I left this cult. What you hear here is the mental gymnastics this locality has thrived on in every household deemed not fit. Many ex-members will immediately recognize the arrogance they use to gaslight you, so they always appear to be in the right. I have never personally received a priestly visit from Tim before, but it became very clear to me that this runs deep in their blood. The same tools used in the priestly visits I endured were simply handed down to the next generation. He doesn't even address the email that went to Bruce Hales and his sons, with all of the questions. Instead, he circles back to another email and takes the easy route. He goes back to an email that I read through previously, so I'm just going to read his answers. I'm just going to read out his responses. This is in reference to when Curtis asked to be seen in person when he was there. To arrange a meeting, you need to give more notice than an email the day before or just showing up unannounced. I was at work on the factory floor when Curtis phoned the morning of the 14th. I missed his first call as I did not recognize the number and was busy on the factory floor. Curtis left no message and I had no idea who was calling. Later that morning, the same number called again. I was in my office and able to pick up the call. I had a conversation by phone, and at that point, Curtis said he was getting ready to leave town. This shows why advanced scheduling of meetings is so important. Yeah. Now we go into... So his response to number 2. Trust is rebuilt by good faith, open communication in person. This is what you requested the first time, and again, I am open to having an in-person meeting. Having communications recorded is not a good way to increase openness or transparency. Now, isn't that the biggest cult statement ever? So, Tim, out here, if someone feels the need to record something for documentation and transparency, that happens. Only in cults does that not happen. He goes on to number 3A. Do you dispute that Cheryl disclosed the abuse in March 2022 and no one followed up? And he says, I think Cheryl brought this allegation up to her dad and mom earlier prior to 2022, which I did quite a few years ago, like over 10 years ago. And they reached out to responsible persons and Ellen was followed up. He denied having any part of it. When Dan and Barb went back to Cheryl after Ellen had been spoken to and denied the allegation, it was reported back that Cheryl said, it's fine. A message was also broadcast to the Maple Creek community at large back in 2022 that the PBCC does not condone sexual abuse or assault, and anybody who has any information of this sort should report it to the proper government authorities so that the truth of any allegations can be properly investigated. It was also communicated that we recommended folks cooperate with any government investigation. Now, you imagine my shock when I get this. Can you imagine how I would have felt if someone had come to me and said, hey, we talked to Ellen about this. This has been addressed to the Maple Creek congregation. And what do you have to say? Like, what is your response? Can you imagine me saying, it's fine? Tim goes on with his lies. He goes on in B. Do you dispute that you received Ellen Drever's recorded confession? He says, we have not seen any confession. You have sent us a partial recording of someone going up to Ellen's door unannounced. There is not anywhere in the recording that we have seen where he admits to any charges. We have requested a full copy of this recording multiple times, but you have refused to provide it. Please provide a full copy of this recording. Now, if you go back through all 24 emails, you guys can count up how many times Tim asked for this. I went through it. I found 0. He never asked for it. Not once did he ask for it. And yes, I did send a partial recording because there was no way in hell I was sending the full one. This went to the police. And at that point in time, I wasn't even planning on going public with this. So no, they did not deserve to have the full recording. They got the beginning of it, and they got the part where Ellen said sorry to me. He responds to C, as in Trevor messaged back in a reasonable amount of time and told Curtis he would check into it, meaning the recording. We never heard anything back after that. And we sent quite a few emails back and forth to my family trying to figure out what was going on. Nobody responded. D, do you dispute that Trevor and Kevin closed their doors on Curtis? Tim says, Curtis did not set up a time with people, but rather made an unannounced visit to both homes without trying to set up a prior appointment. That is not a proper way to have a meeting. Also, people naturally feel threatened when visits are recorded without consent. And Curtis was not straightforward with them when he said he was not recording it. Man, they just cannot handle getting a taste of their own medicine. How many of you have had an unannounced priestly visit? How many of you have had an unannounced priestly visit with people you didn't even know who were coming? I do address this in my response to them. E, do you dispute canceling the Zoom meeting hours before it began? He responds, our offer of a Zoom meeting was for a meeting with Curtis and Cheryl. You added other people to the call without our consent. That is not right. I agree. This stuff totally should be considered. Man, I went through how many years of priestly visits where I never had this consideration. I know of insiders right now that don't have this consideration. So you can go and fuck yourself with that comment. F, do you dispute failing to answer any of their written questions already sent? His response, yes, we do dispute this as we have offered to meet to discuss these questions in good faith. Again, their famous little quote right now, in good faith. They have no idea what that means. His response to, has Ellen provided a statement to the police? No, he has not. Furthermore, to our knowledge, the police have not asked for one. I can show those emails between myself and the police stating he has never cooperated. Okay, his response to number 5, which was, your proposed format meets none of these requirements. This boundary stands. This is about a trauma-informed process. And he says, this is your decision. If you want to meet in good faith to discuss any issues, I am open to scheduling the meeting. If you now are not willing to meet in person after you first requested a meeting, and after you showed up unannounced in Maple Creek and knocked on everyone's door to demand a meeting, it is hard to understand what you really want, other than maybe more material for your podcast. They have no idea that I've sat back with so much information. I haven't even done a podcast of my story on Get a Life to give this case time, to give Maple Creek time to deal with this. So they have this narrative of showing up unannounced. They're really offended by that. They cannot take a taste of what they have done to every other single person that is still inside their getting priestly visits and to those of us that have left. 6, this is their response to, your actions show no intention of addressing this matter responsibility. He's like, no, this is not true. See above. Trust and transparency works both ways. His response to number 7 regarding the testimony of abuse against Arden and Rhonda. Again, refer to the statement above. If you are willing to sit down and discuss these matters through to a resolution, your approach would be different. There's just no comment, because this is where the misogyny comes in. This is where the gaslighting comes in. This is where, if he had truly wanted to help me, his first offering would have been, how do we create a trauma-informed space for us? That would have been the first question. The second would have been acknowledging my husband is sick and cannot meet in person. The third would have been, we have no issue with Steve coming on. Steve is your support person. We have no issue with that because we know we do that. My response to all of this was this. So going into this email, I'm done. I am not going to have any more correspondence with Tim. He clearly is not here for the same resolution that I am looking for. I addressed this email to Lloyd Grimshaw, Bruce Hales, and all of the boys, Dean, Gareth, Charles, and Greg. The first response is my husband. At this point, my husband was ready to drive down there again. Unfortunately, couldn't at this point in time as he was still recovering from an incident that he had and was in the hospital for. So this is my husband's response. Tim, before anything else, I need to address the level of disrespect in your response. You will not speak to my wife in that manner again. I have stood beside Cheryl as she has had to revisit deeply traumatic experiences, and at no point have you demonstrated care, compassion, or an understanding of how abuse disclosure should be handled. Your most recent email crossed a line. I am making several points clear for the record. Everyone involved was aware that I was returning to Maple Creek and that this matter was to be discussed at this time. To now describe my presence as unannounced is a blatant falsehood. We have audio of family members stating they were told not to answer their doors. Something materially changed between my first visit and my return, and that shift warrants honest reflection. You are also well aware of how priestly visits have historically operated. Cheryl was subjected to them repeatedly throughout her life, often with little or no notice and without prior disclosure of who would be present. to now insist on advance notice and specific conditions when responding to a serious abuse disclosure is inconsistent with long-standing practice. I also need to correct the recording regarding notice. I sent an email providing approximately 24 hours notice requesting a meeting. After more than 3 years of waiting for meaningful engagement on this matter, that amount of notice was entirely reasonable. During my phone conversation with you, you stated that you were too busy to meet. To later reframe this as a notice or scheduling issue is inappropriate and misrepresents what actually occurred. And yes, we have audio of you saying that. This matter should have been treated as a top priority. You were aware that I had traveled more than 5 hours to Maple Creek specifically to try to bring this to a resolution. After years of delay, the expectation that responsible people would make themselves available was entirely reasonable. The decision not to engage was not about logistics. It was a choice not to prioritize this issue. In circumstances involving serious harm, that choice speaks directly to intent. If this matter had been treated as the priority it should have been, scheduling would not have been an obstacle. If your own daughter came to you with a disclosure of serious abuse, you would clear your schedule and respond. That is all that was being asked here. As for claims that you did not know how to reach me, my phone number has appeared on every email we have sent. Statements like this only reinforce why transparency and documentation are necessary in a matter of this seriousness. I also need to state for the record that I'm currently under medical directions that requires me to remain in isolation for several weeks. This has been communicated previously and has been ignored in your responses. Any expectation of in-person engagement during this period is neither reasonable nor appropriate. Because of the way this matter has been handled, I have urged Cheryl to discontinue direct communication with you and to seek appropriate care, accountability, and responsible engagement from the wider PBCC community, if such care exists. Continuing in a process that causes further harm is not acceptable. These are my comments. Cheryl will write separately. Regards, Curtis. I'm not going to read out everything that I wrote because there is a lot in here. You're welcome to go ahead and read it, but there are some things that I do need to read out. So under number 1, we're talking about his unannounced visit. And part of what I say says this. It is also important to state clearly that the individuals Curtis attempted to engage with were his family and my family. Family members do not require formal notice or permission to speak with one another, particularly in circumstances involving serious harm and disclosure. To suggest otherwise misrepresents both the nature of those relationships and the reality of how families ordinarily function. In most families, recording conversations would not be necessary. In this case, however, the repeated alteration, denial, and reframing of what has been said has made documentation essential to ensure accuracy and prevent further distortion of the record. And they tell us that we can have access to our family. Here is, and this has been reported, this will go to the governing bodies that oversee and making sure that this church that has charitable status is following what they say. And we have in black and white from Tim completely going against what they say they do. The next thing I want to point out is how they say that Ellen Drever has never been asked by the police. And so I write, number 3, my objective has consistently been a healthy, responsible resolution for Ellen Drever. From the outset, my focus has been on accountability, truth, and the possibility of meaningful intervention. I have never approached this matter with punishment or incarceration as my primary objective. Hence why I reached out to Laura Lee, my oldest sister, first and waited 3 months for a response which never came. Police involvement has occurred and Ellen has been approached by authorities. However, my consistent position, known to you, has been that this situation required responsible acknowledgement and appropriate help. I have sought a process that addressed the underlying harm rather than one focused solely on the punitive outcomes. As a person who endured the torture, I understand the importance of accountability alongside appropriate intervention and treatment, rather than assuming that punishment alone resolves the harm caused. I go on to say, I did not come forward to see Ellen quietly discarded or conveniently ignored. I came forward to protect others in Maple Creek and to force direct confrontation with conduct that has already destroyed lives. You have been given more than 3 years. You have done nothing. The opportunities extended to you far exceed what was owed. The chances offered were generous beyond reason. The period of restraint is ending. I will pursue every remaining avenue until accountability is no longer avoidable. I spoke with police again this week. They confirmed that Ellen Drever has never cooperated with their investigation and has not provided a statement. Police have indicated that they will be following up again in the new year in hopes that Ellen will cooperate. Assertions that cooperation has occurred are therefore incorrect. So my question to you is, will Ellen actually cooperate as you say he will and has done? Number 5, recording request. You stated that you have requested a full copy of the recording multiple times and that I refused to provide it. This is incorrect. A review of the email correspondence shows no prior request from you for the full recording until it was raised in your most recent message. The suggestion that I repeatedly refused a request that was never made is inaccurate and underscores why written documentation and recording is required. And this is why I tell every insider in there to record. Because you guys lie through your teeth. Nobody should have an issue with recording. If you're telling the truth and you're being transparent and you want to clear yourself, recording is the perfect way to do that. I have no problem with anyone recording me. I have nothing to hide. Recording doesn't threaten the truth. It protects it. For survivors and ex-members, again, recording isn't about control or manipulation. It's about safety and accuracy in systems with a long history of denial and hiding. We know what it's like to hear, "That never happened." That's not what was said. You're remembering it wrong. Recording removes that weapon. And from our point of view, recording is the only thing that stops the truth from being erased. And so no matter what, recording has to happen. 6, podcast insinuations. Your suggestion that this matter is being pursued for podcast material is inaccurate and inappropriate. While I have spoken public in limited context, I have not done a dedicated episode on Get a Life focused on what my own abuse or the full scope of information I hold. That omission has been deliberate. I have intentionally exercised restraint in how and where I have spoken, specifically to allow space for a responsible internal resolution within the PBCC. If the PBCC is unwilling or unable to engage honestly and responsibly, public disclosure remains a legitimate and foreseeable outcome. That is not a threat, nor is it my preference. It is the natural consequence of sustained refusal to confront harm. I go on and I explain about how priestly visits occurred with me, and how we never had any type of notice. There's another point here that I want to point out. Throughout my life, priestly visits occurred without advance notice and without prior disclosure of who would be present. I was expected to engage immediately, regardless of circumstances. To now insist on advance notice, specific formats, and unrecorded settings while rejecting documented alternatives is inconsistent with that history and with the seriousness of this matter. Any in-person meeting, if it were ever to occur, would definitely include my psychologist and documentation. In hindsight, this matter could have been addressed when Curtis requested engagement while present in Maple Creek. That opportunity was not taken, and responsibility for that outcome does not rest with us. My next point that I address is the pastoral care in Maple Creek. Finally, it is important to state that the manner in which this matter has been handled demonstrates that there has been no meaningful development in pastoral care within the Maple Creek congregation since my time there. The patterns evident in your emails: deflection, fixation on procedural technicalities, and an inability to listen to or meaningfully engage with the substance of what is being raised mirror the same failures that caused harm in the first place. Effective pastoral care requires listening, accountability, and the capacity to sit with uncomfortable truths without becoming defensive. Those skills are absent from your responses. If there is any genuine intention to prevent further harm, formal training in trauma-informed pastoral care and survivor-centered engagement is not optional. It is necessary. I also need to state that my heart breaks for members of my own family who remain within a system that continues to demonstrate an inability to provide the care and compassion it claims as foundational. Nothing in my correspondence reflects a lack of concern for them. On the contrary, it is precisely because I care that I cannot ignore the harm caused when accountability, listening, and genuine pastoral care are absent. It must also be noted for the record that an entire emailing containing specific, substantive questions was not responded to at all. Those questions went to the core issues raised and required direct answers. The absence of any response to that email is not an oversight. It is part of a broader pattern of avoidance and selective engagement that has characterized this process. Taken together, your actions and your written responses demonstrate an inability and an unwillingness to take this matter on responsibly. The repeated delays, shifting explanations, withdrawal from agreed formats, and refusal to prioritize engagement when opportunities were available make it clear that there was never a genuine intention to see this through to resolution. Your most recent email confirms this. Even had an in-person meeting proceeded, the pattern reflected in your correspondence indicates it would not have resulted in meaningful accountability or action. Continuing engagement under these conditions would only prolong harm rather than resolve it. For that reason, I am ending direct communication. Responsibility for what follows rests with those who chose not to act when they had the opportunity to do so. Any further communication from you that does not clearly acknowledge responsibility or propose a verifiable, trauma-informed, and accountable process will go unanswered. All correspondence to date will be retained as part of the written record. This matter will now proceed through other appropriate channels, first within the wider PBCC community, and if no resolution is reached, publicly. No further response is required from you, Tim, but I do expect a response from one of the above addressed persons. Cheryl. So as you can see, their public claims through new podcast that families have access to those who have left are completely denounced here. If what they say is true, an unannounced visit should be welcomed, right? Let's now watch the video of Curtis having those doors slammed in his face by two people who said they were going to help.
Hey Trevor, how you doing?
Good. I'm not free to talk.
Why?
I'm not.
So you,
No.
does God allow you to lie?
No, I'm not. I'm just not free to talk, Curtis. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'll go to Tim's.
Okay, you go talk to Tim. Thank you.
Yeah. Disappoint me, Trevor. You can't even fight for your sister when you told me you would. Liar!
He then went to my other brother's house to see if he could have a conversation with him. He had already been to two previous brethren places prior to this with no answers and very vague information. He had not been met with any care and compassion at this point. Going to my other brother's home yielded the same result. Here's the audio he got from my second brother's house.
Okay, November 12th, 2025 at 4:58 p.m. Going to Kevin.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good, and you?
Good.
Good.
Kevin home?
Yeah, he is.
Can I talk to him?
Actually, Curtis, we don't really want to talk
How
today.
come?
Because we don't. Thank you, though.
I actually have a lot of empathy for them. They are products of their environment. I forgive what they did here. They are simply robots of the system, without the ability to think independently or act on what truly needs to be done. And one of the final questions that I am asked is, have you heard from Sydney or Lloyd Grimshaw? And I say, no, nothing. And it is turned into a hashtag, silence from Sydney. I had planned to do a mass email to prominent Brethren members in the PBCC, but I had a case land on my lap that shook me to my core and brought one of our worst fears and hunches into reality. For that reason, I chose not to engage further. We are really dealing with another JT Jr. dictatorship, and I say that not as a compliment to Bruce, but as a warning to the brethren. I want to address something that was said on the PBCC's latest podcast, Brethren and Sisters. There's a lot I could say about that episode because it presents a reality that is the complete opposite of what many people inside are actually living and what so many of us who have left know to be true. I want to focus on one thing in particular: the sob stories, the wounded tone, the offended posture, the emotional hand-wringing over how misunderstood you feel, how hurt you are by what the media is saying about you. There's a quote that says, "If you wanted me to speak kindly of you, you should have behaved better." That applies here. And I think many insiders and ex-members would agree with that. And I would add this: there is a far easier way to clean this up, and it's a long word. Bruce and his inner circle might struggle to pronounce it, so I'm going to help you. The word is called accountability. Again, I'm going to say that again. Accountability. Spelt ACCOUNTABILITY. Make sure you get your pen out and rewrite that. Oxford defines accountability as the fact or condition of being accountable, responsibility. And the sentence the dictionary uses to illustrate it is, their lack of accountability has corroded public respect. Oxford, I could not agree more. And I know it's a big word to integrate into your daily walk. But if you practice it for just 3 minutes a day, I guarantee you, lives and the lives of others will be profoundly different. Maybe this is why accountability is such a foreign concept to you, because it begins with the word account. And when your accounting department couldn't even keep the books straight, it's clear that responsibility was never going to balance either. So it's probably no surprise that responsibility, truth, and moral debt never quite add up either. Some things, it seems, are always written off. And you're very good at it. Now let's talk about these poor sob stories you shared about being offended, misunderstood, and upset that people are calling you a cult. All the excuses, all the self-pity, and I'm not even going to unpack them in detail because they were pathetic. What I'm going to do is explain the emotional reality that people like me and thousands of others have lived with our entire lives. You use words like offensive, insulting, affecting our lifestyle. And I'm actually glad you understand those words, because the feelings you're describing don't even scrape the fucking surface I live with every single day. They are the very tip of an iceberg you have spent decades hiding. They don't begin to describe what it is like for a child to have their autonomy ripped away. They don't begin to describe what it means to live with your body never feeling like it belonged to you. They don't even begin to describe the terror, confusion, shame, and permanent fracture that comes from being sexually trafficked at the age of 3. You say you receive emails that hurt you? Are you kidding me? Do you know how many emails I receive and we receive from inside your congregation that are so vile, so disturbing, so dehumanizing that I won't even read them on this podcast? And this is where your fundamental problem lies. A problem created by your isolation, your lack of education, and your complete absence of lived experience outside your system. So let me give you a short lesson in how the human mind actually works. To know hot, you must know cold. To know joy, you must know grief. To understand your environment, you must experience something beyond it. That is how human beings develop perspective, empathy, and humility. But cults don't allow that. They confine experience. They ration reality. They control exposure. Yes, you do feel emotions, but you don't understand them in context. You have no real-world comparison, no baseline, no reference point beyond what you are permitted to experience. That is why this arrogance forms. That is why this moral narcissism thrives. And that is why those of you who have lived real life outside your walls can see straight through the nonsense you produce week after week. Everything you are now receiving, the criticism, the scrutiny, the public outrage, it's not persecution. It is consequence. It is the direct result of decades of secrecy, denial, and harm, and it is long overdue. Like Epstein's accomplices, the perpetrators in my abuse are protected by a powerful organization that has bottomless pockets, ferocious, dishonest lawyers, and zero conscience, compassion, or accountability. What we're watching come out with the Epstein files is not just about one man. It's about networks, about people in positions of power protecting one another. It's about money, influence, silence, and institutions deciding that reputation matters more than children. And here's the part people don't want to accept. Most of the perpetrators connected to Epstein will likely get away with it. Not because the abuse didn't happen, and not because the victims weren't telling the truth, but because power protects itself. Cases become too complex. Files disappear. People disappear. Time runs out. And responsibility gets spread so thin that no one ever is held accountable. That is exactly what this feels like. Not confusion, not misunderstanding, but deliberate protection. And while perpetrators are insulated by money, position, and time, the victims are expected to carry the damage for the rest of their lives. That is the reality for me, and it is a reality for thousands of ex-members who live with this every single day. Justice doesn't always come from a courtroom the way it's supposed to. Justice will come from you, from those who speak out about their abuse, from those who stand with us as we uncover these heinous crimes, and from those who say no to systems like this. We are in a crucial moment in time where a barrier that has never been broken before can be broken. And when we work together, we begin to see the light at the end of this. Thank you to everyone who has supported and donated to the GoFundMe. I so appreciate it. Thank you to everyone who has reached out with messages, calls, and emails. And I'm sorry I haven't gotten back to everyone. And to the Maple Creek community that isn't a part of the PBCC, thank you. I'm deeply appreciative of everyone who has reached out. And lastly, to Michael Bachelard, you have been a backbone for us. We appreciate you so dearly. Here is his latest article on the lawsuit that just came out. The link to it is below in the description, and it reads, Brethren Charity sues woman allegedly abused by an elder. We look forward to the rest of the headlines from this ridiculous lawsuit. To the PBCC, you are making this much messier than it needs to be. Respond to my emails and let's work this out. Pull your head out of the sand. I have some glasses waiting for you, and choose accountability instead of denial. Until next time, everyone, much love to you all. How can you support Get a Life podcast? We are currently raising funds for this legal lawsuit against Cheryl and the Get a Life podcast. Please check out the GoFundMe link in the description of this episode. Thank you to everyone who has donated. You can donate internationally via PayPal at www.paypal.me/getalifepodcast. Or you can scan the QR code on your screen that takes you to our GoFundMe. Every donation helps keep this project alive. If you are in a high-demand religious group and need help, please go to oliveleaf.network. To share your story or be a guest on the show, email info.getalife@proton.me. You can find all our Get a Life merchandise on our website at www.getalife.net. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to Get a Life, and comment.